Brothers and sisters, when we speak of the first object that must be removed from your home, we are talking about things that are connected to idolatry or false worship. And though they may appear harmless, beautiful, or even culturally valuable, in the realm of the spirit, they are open doors that invite darkness into your space, because anything that has ever been dedicated to another power other than the Almighty carries with it the residue of that dedication. Many people unknowingly bring such objects into their homes, thinking they are nothing more than art pieces or historical souvenirs. Yet the atmosphere of the home begins to change slowly, because these items were never created merely as decoration. They were made as symbols of allegiance, and when they enter your home, they bring with them the very spirit to which they were once dedicated. It could be a statue from a foreign land, a carved idol gifted by a traveler, or a cultural ornament inherited from ancestors who worshipped other gods. And because they were once part of spiritual rituals, they hold the power to attract that same influence wherever they are placed. You see, light and darkness cannot coexist peacefully, and when you allow something that represents darkness to sit in a place meant for light, there will always be tension in the atmosphere, even if you cannot explain it logically. Some homes carry a sense of heaviness not because of what is happening emotionally, but because the walls themselves have absorbed the presence of something that does not align with divine truth. The spiritual world is legalistic, and the moment an object that was once dedicated to false power crosses your threshold, it gains permission to influence your environment. You might feel restless during prayer, or experience unexplained fear, or sense that your thoughts are easily distracted when you try to read or meditate on divine truth. And you wonder why, but it is because there is an altar hidden in plain sight. It may not be one you built with your hands, but it was built through what you allowed into your space. Many people think idolatry means bowing down before a statue, but idolatry is not only about posture. It is about presence and agreement. When an image or figure that represents another spirit is welcomed into your home, even silently, you have unknowingly agreed with that spirit. The object itself becomes a silent witness of that agreement, and though it cannot speak in human language, in the spirit it speaks loudly. It testifies that your space is open for its influence, and until it is removed, peace cannot fully reign. That is why the word teaches, do not bring a detestable thing into your house, or you will be set apart for destruction like it. The spiritual principle here is simple: what you host, you empower, and what you empower begins to shape your atmosphere. I have seen people struggle with sleepless nights, sudden arguments in the home, constant financial delay, and even recurring sicknesses that no doctor can explain. And when the root was traced, it was connected to objects that carried idolatrous energy. Sometimes it's something as small as a charm, a tribal mask, or an antique idol passed down through generations. Because it seems like family history, people hold on to it out of sentiment, but what they are really holding on to is a link to the very spirit that fought their ancestors. The enemy hides in familiarity. He disguises bondage as heritage, and the moment you cherish what should be cast away, you give him room to remain. This is why discernment is so crucial. You must walk through your home and ask yourself, what does this represent? Who made this and for what purpose? Where did this come from? If you do not know its spiritual origin, you must pray for clarity, because not every beautiful thing belongs in the presence of holiness. Some of the most dangerous objects are those that seem harmless, because their subtlety disarms your caution. But once you understand that your home is a spiritual environment, not just a physical dwelling. You will no longer tolerate anything that competes with divine authority. When you remove such objects, you are not just cleaning your home, you are reclaiming spiritual territory. Every time you take down a false image, you are saying to the unseen world, "This place belongs to the light." Every time you discard an idol, you are declaring that your allegiance is not divided. And the moment you do that, you will notice the shift. Peace returns, the air feels lighter, and your prayer feels alive again because the blockage has been removed. You will begin to experience an ease in communication with the divine, as if something that was choking your spiritual atmosphere has been lifted. Some may say, "But it's just decoration, I don't worship it." Yet the spiritual world doesn't operate on what you say. It operates on what you allow. Permission in the spiritual realm is not always verbal, sometimes it is physical presence that gives consent. So even if your words say, "I don't believe in this idol," but your actions say, "I'm willing to keep it," the spirit behind it has already claimed its right to stay. That's why faith requires alignment between heart and environment. You cannot serve light and house darkness at the same time. When you cleanse your surroundings, you purify the channel through which divine presence flows. So, my brothers and sisters, look around your home with spiritual eyes. Examine your shelves, your tables, your decorations, your inherited objects. Ask for divine wisdom to show you what doesn't belong, and when you find it, don't hesitate. Remove it completely, destroy it if necessary, and pray over your home. As you do this, you are not losing anything valuable. You are gaining freedom. You are opening the door for divine peace to dwell fully. Your home will no longer be a battleground. It will become a sanctuary where divine light reigns without resistance. And when the light reigns, darkness must flee, because no idol, no false spirit, and no ancient dedication can stand in the presence of true divine authority. When we move deeper into understanding the second object that invites darkness into your home, we must speak about occult books, witchcraft tools, and objects connected to mystical or forbidden practices that many people unknowingly keep because they appear educational, artistic, or even fascinating. Yet in the spiritual realm, they are direct portals that connect your home to powers of darkness. These items include tarot cards, spell books, Ouija boards, crystals used for channeling energy, horoscopes, pendulums, dream interpretation guides rooted in sorcery, or any literature that teaches manipulation of unseen forces outside divine authority. Because the moment such things enter your environment, they invite an atmosphere of spiritual interference. Many think they are harmless, simply tools of curiosity or cultural study, but curiosity has always been one of the most dangerous open doors, because what begins as fascination can end as bondage. When you keep such books or tools, even if you never use them, they still carry a spiritual signature, because these items were designed with intention, and intention carries power. The spirit behind witchcraft is control, the desire to influence outcomes without divine will, and any object connected to that spirit carries its same energy. So when you have them in your home, your environment becomes heavy, your prayers feel resisted, and your thoughts may grow clouded because light and darkness cannot occupy the same territory in peace. Many homes that once felt peaceful began to experience sudden unrest after the introduction of these items, and people blame their stress or circumstances, not realizing that it is the presence of such objects shifting their spiritual balance. There are those who collect occult books out of intellectual interest, saying they just want to understand or study different spiritual traditions, but the problem is that exposure brings invitation. The mind may read, but the spirit absorbs. Every written word inspired by darkness carries the same frequency as the one who wrote it, and once that energy enters your home, it lingers. The moment you allow such writings or objects to rest on your shelves, your home becomes a storage for spiritual toxins, and they begin to leak into your environment without your awareness. Some people experience strange noises, sleepless nights, recurring nightmares, or unexplained tension in their households, not understanding that they have given legal access to darkness through objects that seem harmless. And what makes it more dangerous is that the enemy knows how to disguise darkness as light. There are books that claim to teach you about energy, healing, manifestation, or spiritual awakening, yet they are filled with occult principles, masked in words that sound pure. But true light never hides behind secrecy or rituals. It flows from truth and freedom, not manipulation and formulas. Anything that teaches you to access power without relationship to divine truth is a counterfeit path. The same goes for crystals and objects that people believe can channel good energy, attract money, or protect from harm, because these beliefs are rooted not in faith, but in superstition and human control. The spirit of darkness does not care whether you call it magic or energy. As long as it removes your dependence from divine authority, it has accomplished its purpose. I have seen people who once walked in peace but slowly drifted into confusion after entertaining these things. Their homes became places of argument, their finances dried up, and their dreams became tormented. The reason is simple: darkness cannot coexist with divine order, and when you host its instruments, you host its influence. You cannot fill your home with what belongs to the enemy and still expect divine peace to stay. When you entertain what contradicts truth, you invite what competes with light. It doesn't matter if you bought it in innocence. Once light reveals its nature, responsibility begins. You must remove it immediately, not store it, not give it away, but destroy it, because even gifting it to another continues the cycle of bondage. There is a spiritual principle that whatever you host, you empower, and whatever you empower begins to speak. That's why some people feel a strange sense of watching eyes in their rooms, or heaviness that seems to follow them from one space to another. It's because the objects themselves carry energy that resists divine presence. Darkness does not need your permission through words. It only needs your acceptance through possession. That is why spiritual cleansing begins with separation, removing from your life anything that competes with divine truth. When you do this, you are not practicing fear. You are practicing faith. You are declaring, only light shall dwell here, only peace shall reign here, only truth shall have authority here. And as you remove these things, you must also close the door spiritually. You do that through prayer, through declaring your home cleansed and rededicated to divine presence. Walk through your rooms and speak life where there was confusion, peace where there was fear, clarity where there was deception. The moment you do, you will feel a change in the air, because darkness cannot remain where truth is spoken with authority. You might notice that the dreams that once tormented you begin to fade, that your thoughts become lighter, and your sleep becomes peaceful again. The divine presence that once felt distant begins to draw near, because you have cleared the atmosphere for it to dwell freely. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you this with love. There is no such thing as harmless darkness. Every connection to forbidden knowledge carries a price, and that price is always peace. Do not let curiosity rob you of clarity. Do not let fascination open doors that faith must later close. When you rid your home of occult books, tools, or mystical items, you are not losing treasures, you are gaining freedom. You are making your home a temple of divine presence, not a storage for confusion. And when divine presence fills your home, you will feel the difference. Not only in the atmosphere, but in your spirit, your thoughts, and your relationships. The light will flow freely, and the peace you've been praying for will finally take residence. Because you have made room for it by removing what never should have been there. The third object that invites darkness into your home is anything connected to idolatry, statues, charms, or symbols that represent false gods, mythical beings, or cultural deities that people often keep as decorations or souvenirs without realizing that they carry a spiritual significance that opens doors to invisible forces that compete with divine truth. Many times people travel and bring home little statues, masks, or carvings thinking they are just art or historical pieces. Yet these items were originally created for worship or spiritual rituals in the lands they came from. What was once used to honor other spirits still carries the same energy, and when brought into your home, it silently claims spiritual ownership over your space. You may think it is just a figure or symbol, but in the unseen realm, it is a declaration that another authority is being acknowledged in your environment, and that acknowledgement invites darkness to dwell comfortably where only light should reign. Some people keep images of Buddha, dragons, Egyptian gods, Greek figures, or tribal totems because they seem elegant or exotic, but beauty can be deceptive when it hides bondage. Darkness rarely enters through something ugly. It prefers the disguise of culture, art, or fascination, because these appeal to human emotion. When you place such an image in your home, you unknowingly give it honor, and honor is a form of worship. The moment you give any form of reverence to something that does not represent divine truth, you grant it a right to influence your atmosphere. That is why so many homes that are filled with idols or symbolic objects begin to experience a slow drain of peace, because divine presence will not share its glory with another. The divine cannot fully rest in a place where the image of another authority is exalted, even if done unconsciously. Idols have been around since the beginning of humanity's fall, and their purpose has always been the same: to redirect worship from truth to deception. They may come in the form of wood, stone, metal, or even art printed on canvas, but the spirit behind them is ancient and strategic. It does not need you to kneel before it, it only needs you to accept its presence. Once accepted, it begins to establish spiritual claim over your environment, whispering confusion into the atmosphere, making prayer heavy, and stealing your sense of spiritual clarity. There are homes that look beautiful yet feel heavy the moment you step inside, and if you look carefully, somewhere on the shelf or in a corner there sits a symbol that does not belong to light. Even symbols that seem harmless can carry darkness. Some people wear jewelry with signs that have occult roots, such as the all-seeing eye, pentagrams, or other mystical emblems, believing they are fashion statements, yet they were designed to represent allegiance to spiritual systems that oppose divine truth. The enemy does not care how innocent you are. As long as you host his symbols, you give him a right to linger. That is why divine instruction always forbids the creation or possession of images or likenesses intended for spiritual significance outside divine authority. You cannot bless what was cursed in its origin and expect it to serve you well. When you bring such an object into your home, it does not adapt to your faith. It brings its own influence, its own energy, and its own spiritual claim. I have seen people who once lived peacefully start experiencing sudden fear, confusion, and loss of direction after decorating their homes with cultural artifacts gifted by others. They didn't know those items were connected to rituals or ceremonies of other faiths. Darkness doesn't need your understanding. It only needs your permission, and permission is granted through possession. Some objects come from lands that have long histories of ancestral worship or spirit invocation, and though you may not know their stories, the spirits attached to them do not forget where they came from. When you place them in your home, you extend an invitation that they eagerly accept. It is important to understand that removing idols is not about rejecting art or beauty. It is about restoring purity to your space. There is a difference between decoration and dedication. If an object was once dedicated to a false god, it cannot be repurposed for peace, no matter how beautiful it appears. You must discern what carries spiritual weight in your surroundings, because sometimes the battle you feel in your home is not emotional or physical. It is spiritual, triggered by what you have unknowingly allowed to stay. And once you decide to remove these things, do not just store them or sell them. For when you pass them to others, you pass the same darkness. You must destroy them completely. Break them, burn them, or discard them in a way that they cannot be restored. When you do this, you are not acting out of fear, but out of wisdom and obedience. Darkness loses its authority where truth takes action. As you cleanse your home, pray over the rooms, speak light into the atmosphere, and declare your space dedicated only to divine presence. You will sense a shift immediately. Peace will begin to return, clarity will increase, and the heaviness that once rested in the air will lift. Brothers and sisters, understand this truth. What you host, you honor, and what you honor, you empower. If you honor divine truth, you empower peace. If you honor idols or symbols of other powers, you empower darkness. You cannot mix both and expect harmony. A pure home attracts divine presence, and divine presence brings everything you need: protection, blessing, joy, and rest. The moment you remove every idol and every false symbol, your home becomes a sanctuary once again. Light fills the walls, love fills the air, and you will begin to experience what true peace feels like when nothing competes with divine authority in your home. The fourth object that invites darkness into your home is music, movies, and artwork that glorify violence, immorality, rebellion, or spiritual corruption, because what you allow to play within your home becomes a spiritual atmosphere that either welcomes peace or invites torment. And many people underestimate how deeply the media they consume shapes the energy of their environment. Sound carries power, rhythm carries frequency, and imagery carries spirit. And when your home is filled with entertainment that celebrates darkness, the very air begins to vibrate with confusion and unrest. Some say it is only art or fun, yet everything created with intention carries the spirit of its source. When the Creator is inspired by rebellion, lust, pride, or mockery of divine truth, those same spirits flow through the content and into the lives of those who absorb it, slowly dulling sensitivity to light. There are songs that sound harmless, but carry lyrics soaked in bitterness, anger, lust, or self-exaltation. And when these are played repeatedly, they plant seeds of unrest and defilement in the unseen. Your home becomes a broadcast station that welcomes the same spirit the song was born from. Darkness does not always come with thunder or shadow. It often comes through melody, through words sung with passion, but rooted in deception. Some songs glorify witchcraft, heartbreak, or revenge, yet people hum them casually, not realizing they are agreeing with messages that resist divine peace. Music was designed to carry worship, and worship always empowers something. It either exalts truth or strengthens deception. When you allow music that glorifies sin to dominate your home, you are unknowingly giving worship to the spirit behind it. movies and television shows function in the same way. The eye is the gateway of the soul, and what you continuously watch, you unconsciously become. Many people watch films filled with sorcery, horror, sexual immorality, and profanity, claiming it is just entertainment. But the spirit behind those productions is not entertainment. It is infiltration. Darkness knows that if it cannot enter through your will, it will enter through your amusement. That is why so many people who spend long hours consuming violent or sensual content begin to experience desensitization, apathy towards spiritual things, and lack of peace in their homes. They wonder why they feel distant from divine presence or why their children struggle with fear and rebellion. But the answer lies in what fills the atmosphere day after day. The enemy has mastered the art of hiding poison in beauty. Some songs sound inspiring but subtly teach independence from divine authority. Some movies appear motivational but glorify pride and ego as strength. Even artwork can carry messages that invite unrest. Paintings filled with chaotic energy, dark figures, or symbols tied to rebellion release unseen vibrations that shift the mood of a room. The human spirit is sensitive even when unaware. It absorbs what surrounds it. That is why when you enter a place where violent or immoral music plays, you feel the atmosphere shift, because the spirit of the content has filled the space. In the same way, when you fill your home with uplifting, truthful, and pure sounds, peace naturally abides, because light attracts light. Many families struggle with tension and arguments without realizing that their entertainment has trained their minds toward conflict. Constant exposure to content that glorifies violence desensitizes the spirit to peace, and soon even small disagreements feel explosive. Others experience spiritual dryness because their ears and eyes are constantly feeding on what quenches divine hunger. The more you consume from the table of darkness, the less appetite you have for truth. And that is why guarding what enters your home through screens and speakers is one of the most powerful forms of spiritual protection. There are homes where certain rooms feel heavy or cold, and often that is where darkness has been entertained the most, perhaps through music, games, or media filled with lust or cruelty. You cannot cleanse a space while continuing to feed it darkness. Cleansing begins by changing what you allow to speak in your home. Ask yourself, what are the voices that fill your atmosphere? Are they voices of worship, gratitude, love, and faith, or voices of anger, lust, and rebellion? Because every voice leaves a residue, and that residue becomes either a fragrance of peace or a stench of confusion. When you remove music, movies, or art that carry dark messages, you are not losing culture, you are regaining clarity. Your home is sacred ground, not a theater for corruption. Choose songs that uplift, movies that inspire purity, art that reflects truth, because these things invite the presence of divine peace. You will notice the difference quickly. Your thoughts will feel lighter, your rest will be deeper, and your atmosphere will feel alive again. Children will become calmer, conversations will flow with more love, and your prayer will feel powerful once more, because you have silenced the noise of darkness. Do not be afraid to cleanse your playlists, your shelves, or your walls. Every time you choose to replace darkness with light, you make space for divine presence to fill. Even the smallest choices matter. Changing a song, turning off a show, or removing an image can shift the spiritual climate of your home. And once you begin to live in that clean atmosphere, you will never want to go back, because peace has a fragrance that once experienced becomes unforgettable. Remember, whatever you watch, you worship, whatever you listen to, you invite, and whatever you display, You declare, make your home a declaration of light, a sanctuary where truth is celebrated and peace reigns without resistance. The songs, movies, and art you host either open heaven's windows or build walls of darkness. Choose what welcomes heaven. Fill your environment with words and sounds that lift your spirit, because your home should not echo the world's confusion. It should sing with divine harmony, radiate peace, and reflect the beauty of truth that drives darkness away without struggle. The fifth object that invites darkness into your home is anything that carries the residue of pain, trauma, or sinful memories from the past, because objects can hold emotional and spiritual imprints, just like people hold memories. Many do not realize that the things they keep, old letters, photographs, gifts from unhealthy relationships, items connected to moments of rebellion or disobedience, can act as anchors that tie their present atmosphere to past bondage. When you keep something that constantly reminds you of a season of heartbreak, disobedience, or sin, you keep the atmosphere of that moment alive. And though time has passed, the spirit connected to that object remains active. You may not notice it immediately, but over time, it begins to whisper nostalgia, guilt, or sorrow back into your emotions, reopening doors that truth has already closed. Darkness does not need to re-enter through new sin. It often returns through memory, and memory hides in objects. Some people hold on to clothes worn during seasons of impurity, photos from relationships that were never blessed, or jewelry given by someone who once carried dark influence, and they wonder why it is so difficult to move forward. The reason is simply, you cannot step into freedom while holding the tokens of your bondage. When divine light delivers you, it calls you not only to leave Egypt, but to let go of everything that carries Egypt's scent. Keeping items from your past that are tied to pain, rebellion, or sin means keeping the energy of those moments alive in your home, and that energy will resist peace. You might find that every time you try to pray, an old thought or emotion arises. Every time you feel joy, a strange sadness follows. This is because the atmosphere of your home still holds physical connections to the darkness you were freed from. There are those who think sentimental value justifies keeping such things, saying they represent memories or lessons. But not every memory deserves a monument. Some memories are meant to be buried, not displayed. You cannot decorate your home with what once destroyed your peace and expect harmony to dwell there. Even small things, like a gift from a toxic person, a love letter from a past relationship, or an item connected to a season of rebellion, can carry a lingering presence that reminds darkness it still has a place in your life. When you keep these things, you send a message to the unseen realm that part of you still belongs to that moment. But when you let go, when you remove them completely, you make a declaration that the old has passed away and that your home belongs entirely to light. Some objects may seem harmless, perhaps a perfume, a shirt, a small souvenir, but if it connects you to guilt, pain, or sin, it carries weight. Darkness is subtle, it hides in sentiment. It whispers, keep it, it's part of your story. Yet it knows that as long as you keep it, healing cannot be complete. Your home is not meant to be a museum of your pain. It is meant to be a dwelling of peace. When divine light forgives you, it also calls you to remove the reminders of what you've been forgiven for. Because forgiveness cleanses, but cleansing must be maintained through separation. Holding on to such things can reopen emotional wounds, cause sudden sadness, or even reignite old desires you thought were gone. That is why it is so important to walk through your home and ask yourself what truly belongs in your new season. The process of removing such items is not only physical but spiritual. It is a symbolic act of surrender, a way of saying that you refuse to let yesterday define your atmosphere today. As you release those things, something powerful happens. The energy tied to them begins to break. The heaviness lifts and your home feels lighter. The presence of peace becomes stronger because there is no longer anything competing for emotional space. Many people who have done this testify that their dreams changed, their moods improved, and they felt a renewed sense of clarity. It is not superstition, it is the law of atmosphere. What you host determines what you feel. And it is not only objects from your own past that can hold darkness, but also items inherited from others. Sometimes you receive furniture, jewelry, or decorations from people who lived in turmoil, addiction, or rebellion, and those things carry the residue of their atmosphere. That is why cleansing is necessary whenever something enters your home, not because you are fearful, but because you are wise. Bless what enters, and if peace does not rest upon it, remove it. You do not know what words were spoken over that item, what energy it has absorbed, or what memories it holds. Peace must be guarded, and peace is preserved through discernment. Brothers and sisters, freedom requires separation. You cannot walk in newness while keeping relics of your old chains. Every time you look at something that reminds you of pain, your spirit returns to that moment. But when you remove it, you make space for restoration. The past loses its grip, the enemy loses his right, and divine peace fills the vacuum. Your home begins to breathe again. You begin to sense freshness, lightness, and joy where heaviness once lived. So walk through your home with courage. Open the drawers, the closets, the boxes under your bed. Look at each item and ask yourself, does this carry peace or pain? Does it remind me of who I was or who I have become? Anything that ties you to sorrow, shame, or rebellion must go. You will feel resistance because darkness hates to lose its hiding place, but once you decide, divine strength will empower you. Remove, release, and replace it with truth, beauty, and peace. Fill your home with things that carry life, scripture, light, music of worship, symbols of faith and hope. When your home is cleansed from the objects of your past, it becomes a sanctuary where you and your loved ones can flourish. And once peace has settled there, guard it fiercely, because peace is not merely the absence of noise. It is the presence of divine light ruling your atmosphere with authority and grace. The sixth object that invites darkness into your home is anything connected to death, grief, or the spiritual world that has not been properly released, because death carries a weight that can linger long after the physical has gone, and many homes unknowingly host this heaviness through objects such as ashes, funeral items, images of the dead, or mementos kept from a place of pain rather than peace. When you hold on to such things, not for remembrance, but from emotional attachment, you create a bridge between life and the shadow of loss, and that bridge becomes a channel through which sorrow and spiritual heaviness travel freely. Darkness uses grief as an entry point because it disguises itself as comfort. It whispers, hold on to what you lost. Yet its true goal is to keep you tied to death rather than life, to keep your heart bound to the past rather than open to peace. There is nothing wrong with honoring the memory of those who have passed, but when remembrance turns into attachment, it becomes an open door for spiritual heaviness. Some people keep urns of ashes in their homes, believing it brings closeness, but the truth is that the human spirit does not dwell in ashes, and the energy of death should not be hosted where life is meant to flourish. Your home is designed to carry the vibration of joy, growth, and peace, not the weight of sorrow or spiritual residue. When ashes or objects tied to the grave are kept in living spaces, The atmosphere becomes confused. It cannot fully host life because death has been given residence. The air becomes heavy, dreams may grow dark, and an unexplainable sadness may hover in the background. This is not imagination. It is atmosphere responding to what is being hosted. Some homes keep photographs of loved ones who passed away, and that in itself is not wrong. But when those photos are placed in a way that feels like an altar, when candles are lit before them, or when one speaks to them or asks for their guidance, it crosses a line into spiritual danger. Communicating with the dead, even in affection, invites deception, because darkness mimics the familiar. It can manifest as comfort while planting confusion, making one feel as if the presence of the departed still lingers. But true peace comes from release, not retention. When you let go and dedicate your grief to divine healing, you invite light to take the place of sorrow. When you cling to death, you unknowingly keep the door open for torment disguised as comfort. There are also people who collect antiques or second-hand items from estate sales, unaware that some of these objects carry energy from their previous owners. Death leaves residue, and grief can linger in physical things. A mirror, a piece of jewelry, or a chair can absorb the emotion of its past, and when brought into your home, it can bring with it an atmosphere that doesn't belong. That is why discernment is vital when bringing used or inherited items into your living space. Every item must be blessed, prayed over, and cleansed through words of truth, because light neutralizes what darkness once claimed. Even symbols of death, like skull decorations, horror-themed art, or images glorifying darkness, carry the vibration of fear and hopelessness. Some people display them for aesthetic reasons, believing it is just a trend or art, but they do not understand that the spirit behind such images was born in rebellion against life itself. When you fill your home with reminders of decay, you invite the spirit of decay into your environment. Life flows where life is celebrated. Joy grows where peace is protected. Anything that glorifies death rather than acknowledges life gives the enemy permission to hover and drain vitality. The same principle applies to clothing or jewelry associated with darkness, items with skulls, symbols of death, or designs tied to occult subcultures. These things may appear fashionable, but they were birthed from inspiration that opposes divine life. When you wear them, you unintentionally align yourself with that energy, and when you store them in your home, they contribute to the same atmosphere. Darkness is territorial. It will claim whatever reflects its likeness. Many times, people who feel constant sadness or heaviness in their homes do not realize that it is not only emotional but spiritual. When objects connected to death, mourning, or fear fill the environment, the atmosphere becomes dull, and even hope feels distant. But once those things are removed, there is a noticeable shift. The air feels lighter, the rooms brighter, even the sound of silence becomes peaceful. This is because the spirit of death no longer has legal space to dwell. It takes courage to let go of these things because grief is a tender emotion, but true healing cannot dwell where death is honored more than life. You honor those who have passed not by keeping their ashes or relics, but by living fully, joyfully, and in peace. Releasing does not mean forgetting. It means allowing divine comfort to replace emotional bondage. When you let go of what ties you to death, you make room for the spirit of life to fill your home with warmth again. So walk through your home with wisdom and compassion. If you have kept ashes, photos, or objects from loved ones who have passed, ask yourself what emotion they carry. Do they bring peace, or do they reopen pain? If they bring heaviness, it is time to release them. Pray over your home, speak words of life, and dedicate every corner to peace. Replace images of sorrow with words of hope. Replace reminders of death with symbols of faith and life. You will find that joy begins to bloom again where grief once lived, and your home becomes light-filled, peaceful, and alive with divine presence. Because where death is honored, light cannot dwell fully. But where life is celebrated, darkness loses its claim. Peace is not built on holding on. It is born through letting go. The moment you release the things that carry the energy of death, you welcome the fullness of divine life, and your home becomes not a place of mourning, but a sanctuary of everlasting light and comfort.